It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA
and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out all of our other wonderful links in the description on Linktree. This week's episode, the Pascagoula Abduction. This is a pretty good one. We're getting caught up on abductions here because we haven't done a whole lot of them. We've done a handful, and I put it to the vote on Patreon. By the way, you can support the show on Patreon. We got a couple different tiers here, but my choices were another from the Files of Project Blue Book, getting 20% of the votes. Strange Sounds got 20% of the votes, and the Pascagoula Abduction, which got 60% of the votes. So people want to hear about these abduction experiences. And that's, by the way, anybody listening, the top tier. If you are the top tier Patreon, you get to vote on our next topics. You get to help us choose from a couple that I'll put a poll on there. So from stuff that I pick, you guys get to help us decide the next topic. You know, there'd be usually have been doing like 2 choices, but I think I'm going to try to up that to 3 choices each time to see. And the way that works is I try to do a vote at least twice a month. So that you guys have a chance to vote on stuff. But sometimes, like last week when there were the holidays, we don't always have the chance to put the vote up. So it doesn't always work out. But my goal is at least twice a month minimum. And so far we have met that for sure since we've done the Patreon. All right. Well, let's get into... Oh, wait. Before we get into it, I just want to mention, I recently started an Instagram, but... I'm not going to even say the name of the Instagram yet. I think it's AlienConPod or whatever, but I'll put the links somewhere eventually, probably in the link tree. But I haven't actually put anything on there yet. I'm still sort of trying to figure out the interface. It's very, very different than Twitter. So there are similarities like hashtags, but other than that, I'm like, reels? What the heck's a reel? I guess short films, I guess. But nobody uses reels anymore. It's all digital nowadays. But anyway, so yeah, I'll get that rolling eventually, but just wanted to mention that, throw that out there, that we will be having an Instagram at some point. I don't know what that point will be. Anyways, let's get into it. The Pascagoula Abductions. Did you get a chance to look into this one, AGETA?
I didn't get the greatest chance because my internet was down for most of the day here, and hopefully it doesn't go down again because it about 10 minutes before we started here, it went down again for 3 minutes and then it came back up. So I got lucky here, I think. Mm-hmm. So I got the gist of the story though. I mean, I understand what they claimed happened and stuff like that, so, but it is a very interesting story, Yeah. It's I kind of like these abduction stories because sometimes just seeing a UFO, it's great and all, and sometimes it could be by a lot of people. Sometimes it could be by just a couple people, but the abduction stuff is a little bit more interesting to me just because of what they describe and what they went through, and what they claim that they went through at least,
Yeah. All right. So the events we're talking about were on October 11th, 1973. Charles Hickson, aged 42 at the time of the events, and Calvin Parker, aged 19, were fishing off of a pier on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi around 9 p.m. And geographically, I guess, this is pretty close to Biloxi, Mississippi. That's sort of the area they're in. While they were fishing, they heard a strange buzzing sound from behind them. They turned around and saw a 10-foot wide, 8-foot high, glowing egg-shaped object that had blue lights on its front. And I saw that description, egg-shaped. Maybe we'll talk about Epstein some other time, but it was hovering just above the ground, about 30 or 40 feet from the riverbank. Now, when they turned around and they saw this thing, the men just completely froze in fear because, I mean, come on, that's got to be fairly unexpected, right?
Oh, yeah.
So as they were watching it, they saw a door appear on the object and were even more surprised to see 3 strange beings exit the craft and float over to where they were. These beings were described as being about 5 feet tall, having bullet-shaped heads. They didn't really have necks. So like the drawing, there is a drawing of them. And if you look at the drawing, it looks like, yeah, just like the head sort of goes straight down to the shoulder. There's no like sort of indentation where you'd expect for the neck. It just looks like just a head stuck on the shoulders, basically. So they had bullet-shaped heads, no necks. They had a slit that could have been a mouth, and they had these thin conical objects sticking out of where you would expect to see a nose and the ears. And they didn't have eyes. So the objects that were sticking out were sort of like carrots or sort of like spikes or something. But in the picture, like they're all the same level. So you would think maybe the nose might be a little lower level, but they look all the same level in the drawing that you can find online, sort of a sketch. So it's sort of weird looking. It's kind of hard to describe it, but I guess that's the closest you can get with words. So the beings had no eyes, and their skin was gray and wrinkled, sort of like a mummy. And their feet were round, sort of round shaped. They didn't have toes, but they had round elephant shaped feet. They had unusually long arms with claw-like hands. So they floated over to where the men were, and they seized them. Now, when they were floating, their feet didn't move or anything, which is strange. I mean, they have legs, but they didn't use them. They just sort of floated over. So they got over there, and they seized Hickson. And when they placed their claw-like hands on him, he became numb all over. And then they floated into the UFO, into a brightly lit room. Where there was apparently no furniture anywhere. It was just a brightly lit room, and the only thing, I guess, was a screen-like device on the wall, sort of like a flat screen TV. So the third being grabbed Parker, and he fainted right away. Apparently, he was completely freaked out and just passed out. In yeah.
I found it kind of funny that like the 42-year-old Charles Hickson, they decided to use two of these guys with, and then the 19-year-old, which you'd think that he would be a more formidable individual, maybe just because he's younger and more, full of energy, less likely to be injured or what have you. It only took one of them,
Yeah. I'm not sure why they would make that decision. Neither one of them looked like they looked like they were fairly fit. If you look at the pictures of them, they definitely look like they got a lot of physical activity in. So yeah. I don't know. Who knows what their weights were at the time? Maybe the older guy was actually quite heavier, but even 50 pounds or something. Who knows? Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. So once on the UFO, they performed some sort of examination on Hickson. So he was floating. They put him in the room, and he was floating at like a 45-degree angle while he was in there. And this like floating eye thing pops out of the wall, and he had trouble describing it. He said the best he could do is basically an eye-like device. So it comes out of the wall, and it moved down his front, and then around and back up and back over his head and stopped in front of his face. And this is sort of different than some other UFO encounters because there were not really a whole lot of, probing and that kind of stuff. Although after this, there are some accounts I found where a sort of female-ish alien came in and put her finger in his mouth and like sort of put her fingers down his throat and were putting them like up through his nostrils or something. But
I heard him describe this in an interview. He said it wasn't quite female, but it was like female-ish in appearance.
Yeah, and then he said that that was really painful, and then he was told telepathically that everything's going to be okay, or whatever. It's not going to hurt, or whatever. And then just like you go to the doctor and be like, is this operation where you're removing my foot going to hurt? Nah, it'll be fine. It won't hurt at all.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah,
they're lying. But all right, so there was that as well, but. After they examined Hickson, they left the room and presumably examined Parker, but he was in a different room, so Hickson's not really sure. And so I found a lot of accounts that I found basically Parker was unconscious for this whole time, and we'll get into that a little bit later maybe. But Hickson was left floating and he was paralyzed. The whole time he couldn't move anything, but he could move his eyes, which is sort of a strange detail. And I wonder, like, what's the mechanism there? Because if you can't move any muscle in your body, why would you be able to move your eyes? I'm not sure. It's kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
because your eyes are controlled by muscles. But I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, so 20 minutes later, Hickson was floated back outside and he found Parker was already there, weeping and praying. So they were placed back in the exact same spot that they were picked up from. The object rose straight up and shot out of sight. Now, that's basically the encounter in a nutshell. Afterwards, they wanted to keep it to themselves. They were afraid of being ridiculed, so at first, they decided they didn't really want to tell anybody, but pretty quickly they turned around and they decided that maybe the government would actually want to know about what had happened. So they called the Kessler Air Force Base in Biloxi, and they told the two to actually report it to the local sheriff. So they were thinking about that, and they decided, well, let's go to the newspaper first, because they were afraid that the police wouldn't take them seriously. So they went to the newspaper office, which was closed. So it was closed. Because of that, they did go to the sheriff's office and told the sheriff their story. After hearing their story, the sheriff put them in a room by themselves. And the room had hidden microphones in it, like voice-acted microphones, I guess. The two men didn't know that. They were actually recorded the whole time, and they had no idea that they were being recorded. Now, the sheriff's idea was that he was going to put them in the room and let them talk amongst themselves, and that would reveal that the two were hoaxing the event, right? They would, align their stories, make further plans and just talk about the hoax in general. Much to his surprise, they didn't do that at all. They talked about the event. So, for example, here's a quote from that recording. "Jesus Christ, God have mercy. I thought I'd been through enough of hell on this earth, and now I've got to go through something like this. See? But they could have, I guess they could have harmed us, son. They had us. They could have done anything to us, but they didn't hurt me." Which is, so he's talking about it still as if it's real, even though they don't know that the police are listening to them and they don't know that they're being recorded. Now, the fear in his voice on this recording convinced the police that the two were being genuine, that they at least believed what they were saying. Whether or not that's what happened to them is anybody's guess. So the story very quickly went to the local press and then was picked up by the national press and became major news across the nation. They had a couple of prominent investigators, one from APRO, or the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, was sent where they sent James Harder to investigate. And this is a strange detail. I found that a couple of different sources said that J. Allen Hynek also went to investigate, but it said he was representing the Air Force. Now, I found this strange because Project Blue Book was closed in 1970. Technically 1970, but kind of more like 1969. They were shuttered down. It was only a technicality. But this is in 1973, so what's he doing still working for the Air Force? It kind of makes you wonder, did they still have a secret project going for a few years there until 1973, when in 73, actually, Hynek started his own organization, which is a whole nother story. But that's just sort of a weird little detail, and I couldn't really verify that. I couldn't verify what Hynek was doing during those years between 70 and 73, other than his academic stuff. So who knows? Maybe he was still working for the Air Force. Maybe they still had something like Project Blue Book. Well, we know for a fact that they did. We just don't know what it was. So maybe he was working for whatever that was. But, excuse me. But that was just sort of an interesting detail that I found in the case that I tried looking to see if I could find the file written by Hynek or Harder. I was not able to locate that, but maybe if I had more time, I could. But there has to be some sort of investigation file if they went to, interview witnesses and stuff. That has to be out there somewhere. I don't know. Did you run across that at all, Agent ETA?
No, I didn't see any of that.
So apparently the two interviewed the witnesses, and Harder hypnotized them, but had to cut the session with Hickson short because he was too frightened. I guess he totally freaked out under hypnosis. And overall, Hynek believed the men's story, saying there was definitely something here that was not terrestrial, which again is pretty strange. Hynek is a strange character. He's gone back and forth between skeptical viewpoints and being a total believer. And even some of his quotations when he was sort of on the UFO bandwagon after Project Blue Book closed down, he's writing books and he started his organization. I think it was QFOS. Even then, he would still sort of hesitate to say that there was extraterrestrial visitations. He was just more along the lines of, yeah, this stuff is happening, but we don't know what it is. He wasn't really jumping to any specific conclusion a lot of the time. Now, after the fact, many years later, in 2001, another witness came forward named Mike Cataldo, Cataldo? Mike Cataldo, I guess is how you'd say it. So he came forward and said that he was in the Navy at the time in 1973, and that day in October, he left the shipyard with a couple of other people, Ted Peralta and Mac Hanna. They left in Ted's VW on Highway 90, traveling west towards Biloxi, and it was nearing dusk as they went. They saw what they thought was a shooting star at first, but then it got closer and then it went down into a marshy tree-lined area. It hovered there for about 30 seconds, spinning and blinking. He said it had lights all around its edge. There was not a definite structure. He said, no, there was a definite structure. It was not just lights. So he said they saw a craft for sure. They said it was a whitish gray color and the shape of a sailor hat or tambourine. And then after 30 seconds, it just shot away, almost like it was suddenly gone. Like very, very fast. Like it was there 1 minute and then boom, gone.
That's kind of weird because I saw another interview with a guy named Larry Booth. Wait, what was the name of the guy you were talking about?
The guy I was talking about, that was, there's three of them. There's Mike Cataldo.
That's right.
Then Ted Peralta and Mac Hanna.
Okay, yeah. So that's very similar to the description that I heard from a person that lives in Pascagoula. And his name was Larry Booth. He seemed like an older gentleman, maybe about retirement age or so, maybe, between 55, 60. They didn't say his age or anything in the interview, but he did describe basically the exact same craft. He described a floating craft above like the streetlights a little bit out in the distance. And it had lights all around the perimeter of it. It had a dome at the top where there was light shining out of it. And he basically only noticed it because he was going to check his front door, see if it was still locked. And he looked up and happened to see it. And like he stood there for a second. Then he walked out his door. And like as soon as he walked out, I guess the craft just flew away. But he described like pretty much the exact same craft, So I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah. Wow. I was just looking at our live show chat. It's popping off. Oh, Agent Kruger's in there. I wonder why he's not coming up on the stage. What happened to him? Let's see.
I don't see him in there.
He was in there. He's typing a little bit, but let's see. Oh, a new message. So, Agent Ether's talking about she's in the city. That's why she's not on tonight. She's because she works in the city 1 week out of the month, so she's kind of remote most of the time. But let's see what. Let's see here. Oh, Squid Killer found me on Instagram. It says he lied. He had 2 posts. Or 3 posts on Instagram. Yeah, I put a couple of test posts just to sort of put stuff on there, but I didn't really hashtag it or anything. So it's just sort of like, whatever. I'm surprised you were able to find me without me actually. I guess it's probably not that hard. I probably used Alien Con Pod on there, so I suppose that's not that hard. I got to read through these comments here just to see what's going on in the live chat. And Denny says, greetings, agents and other keepers of the strange. Agent Kruger posted a bizarre picture of fingers with hands on top clapping. I don't know what that's all about. All right, some weird stuff going on in the live chat. Oh, okay. Agent Ether says that he's at work right now. So, so Agent Ether is telling the story about on New Year's Eve where they went outside. So people were lighting off fireworks as they do, which is, I'm not in favor of it because there's been some pretty bad fires in this area, but people do anyways. So we figured, hey, might as well go outside, check it out and see what's going on. So we went outside to look and I was the last person out. And I guess they went out, the rest of the family went out and outside and they yelled Happy New Year or something. And I wasn't out there when this happened. So by the time I get out there, Agent Ether Agent Ether says, "Hey, that neighbor was sort of yelling at us a little bit." I'm like, "Really? That's weird." So then I go out there, and then the neighbor sort of peeks her head around, is 2 houses down, and says, "I'm calling the cops." I'm like, what? On what?
Hmm?
On what, madam? What are you calling the cops? We're standing in our front yard looking at the fireworks. It was so strange. But all right. Anyways, that's caught up on the live show chat for now. Let's get back to the show. So that was one sighting. So after that sighting, we're talking about Mr. Cataldo, Cata. I don't know why can't I say that name? It's not that hard. Cataldo. Okay, so Mr. Cataldo. Yeah, it's not that hard, right? Why am I having trouble with it? So Mr. Cataldo, after that sighting, they pretty much all went on their own ways, and he changed to his own car after he parted with Ted and Mac, changed to his own car, and on his way to Ocean Springs, it was getting dark, and he saw the object again, and this time he watched it hover for about a minute before it shot off. He said that during both encounters, there were other motorists in the area that slowed down and saw it, but they were the only one the first time, and I guess the second time too. He was the only one to actually pull over and watch it. Everybody else just sort of slowed down and looked at it. Now, this is interesting because my strong belief is that there are far, far more witnesses out there than actually report stuff. I think almost everybody has seen something at least vaguely strange. And I think that the number of UFO reports that have gone unreported, I should say, is numbers in the tens of thousands at the very least. And I can say this from my own experience because, like I've talked about before, for example, one time we saw a strange thing over Fullerton, California, and we didn't report it. Nobody else reported it either. I was about to see something on the news about it, so somebody must have reported it, but before the news report came on, my mom changed the channel. And this is back in the day where you couldn't rewind. There's no TiVos. There was nothing. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see it. Years later, I did see a picture, and I'm pretty sure it was a lighted blimp. That's kind of what it looked like. But the interesting thing about that sighting was that we were in a very busy part of town. Tons of people saw this. Probably thousands and thousands of people saw this all over the place. We're talking about the suburban sprawl, in the LA, greater LA area, essentially. And nobody really did much. They all sort of looked at it and went on their own business. People were pointing. Some people looked startled. I know me and my friends were kind of freaked out, and we're just like, let's just go back inside and ignore what we just saw, pretty much is our reaction to it. So that's just, one example. Based on that and some other stuff I've seen, I think that most of this stuff goes unreported, but who knows? At least most of the witnesses, but maybe some of those other witnesses will come forward at some point. 73, it's not that long ago. A lot of them still are probably around, hopefully. So maybe we'll get some more witnesses come forward and say, yeah, I was there. I did see that strange device. I was driving by. But on the other hand, what are the chances that, one of those people will actually listen to this show? But if you do, go ahead and report it. Maybe record it to New Fork or one of the other places you can report it to. Let's see. Okay, where was I? Let's see. So anyways, yeah. So he said he doesn't know if it was the same craft that he saw before, but he said that the second sighting was in approximately the same place as the Pascagoula abductions. It was approximately the same place and time as when they got abducted. So that could be, he could have saw the craft actually as it was going to abduct these two people, which is pretty interesting if we do have a corroborating witness. Who knows? But I find that fascinating that that's a possibility. All right, so there was also testimony sort of from a police officer, but they wanted to remain anonymous. But they said that during that night when the two were abducted, they got about 50 phone calls reporting UFO activities in the skies. So apparently this thing was zipping all over the place. Now, if 50 people called into the police station, you can bet that a lot more people saw it and did not call in. But Who knows? What I would like to do is to see, I don't know, I wish I had more time for each of these cases. It would have to be like a bi-monthly show if I did all this stuff. But it'd be cool if we could call that the police department there and see if you could actually get the records of those call logs. Would they even have that anymore? I don't know. But that would be pretty cool if we could actually get that evidence. Just the call logs, just a simple, this person called at midnight to report a UFO. And if we had a call log with 40, 50 of those in there, that would be very important corroborating evidence, I think. Very important. But I was unable to find that. I did look for it a little bit, but I couldn't find it. I think you would probably have to call the police station directly, and I doubt they would still have that in their archives because that's kind of a long time ago to keep that much paper.
Yeah, I would kind of doubt it.
Yeah. So there was also sightings a day before the abduction. 15 people reported seeing a large silver UFO slowly fly over a housing project in St. Tammany Parish, New Orleans, Louisiana. Now this, I looked on a map, is about 70 miles away, give or take, but it's not that far. You look at the map, it's like right there, right next to the Biloxi area. It's pretty much a straight shot right over there. So it's kind of interesting. It may or may not be related, but I mean, when you have these mass sightings over a couple of days, you have a bunch of people all reporting a very similar object. Could be related, you know? It's hard to say that it wasn't. Now, after the events, they did go on to take a lie detector test. Which one of them? I think it was
Didn't they both take it?
Yeah, but one of them, I think it was it Parker that said that I should have wrote this down, but one of them said that they wanted to take a lie detector test to sort of prove that they were not lying, you know, and they took it and they passed. But yeah, we've talked about on the show before about how I don't put too much stock in that, but it's still pretty interesting. And it still does support the idea that the two believed what they were saying. You know, they definitely felt like they were telling the truth, according to not just the lie detector test, but a lot of people that they interacted with, whether it was the police or the two people from those organizations, you know, Hynek and what was that other guy, those guys that interviewed him. I mean, people think that they were telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. So do you have anything else to add before we move on, Agent ETA?
No, I think you mentioned everything I took notes on as far as that goes.
All right. So I found a recording of the actual police interview. There's the recording out there. You can find it. It's on the internet. It's available. And I was hoping to sort of, you know, it's an old tape recording and it's very, very noisy. I have really good restoration software. I have Isotope RX10, but so I was hoping to sort of restore it and make it more easy to listen to, but I don't really have a lot of skill in that department. That's not really what I do. It would have taken all day to get something usable. It's like really, really bad quality. So unfortunately, I didn't end up using the recording for this show, which I was kind of hoping I could do, but maybe I'll figure that out and do it as like a bonus content thing or something. But the recording does have a transcript, which I am going to, let's see, let me put that. You want to read this with me, Agent ETA? I'll put a link in the, maybe in the live show chat, and we can go through the transcript of the police interview, because the way they describe this stuff is pretty interesting, I think. And it's, I don't know, like I always say, it's more interesting to go and look at the original witness statements than it is just to hear somebody's opinion about it, right? So let me see. I got this on my Chromebook, but let me pull up the link here so I can send it in the chat. It's on NICAP or kneecap as we call it on this show. Diamond's going to hit the sack. Night Diamond, thanks for joining us. Hope to see you next time. Thanks again for the video edits. Diamond started putting some little videos. I have to ask him where he got this from, but with our YouTube, he's doing some YouTube stuff for us. And on the last video he did for the Allagash I always say abduction. I don't know why. For the Allagash abduction, he made like these little short clips to go in there in a couple of points. It's kind of neat looking. It's like an animated thing. It's obviously animated, but it kind of a little more interesting than just our logo the whole time. But all right. Did you get that link, Agent ETA?
Yeah.
All right. So if you look, it's got a picture of Charles and Calvin there sitting there. And I was looking, dude, Charles is only 42. He looks pretty rough for 42.
A little bit. He's definitely going bald.
He's must work outdoors. And it starts off with a quote. I can tell you here and now, and God is my witness, and I believe in God, that when I die, I'll tell everybody what I saw, and it'll be the same story. So there's one thing to mention is that Hickson, his story stayed pretty consistent throughout the years, but Parker, the younger one, he did go on to do like a lot of the UFO circuits, a lot of interviews and a lot of that stuff. And people pointed out that his story did change over the years. And in fact, at one point he did claim some things like being able to like having visions of the future and stuff. Like his stuff sort of spun more and more over the years. And a lot of people point to that as evidence that he was hoaxing the whole thing, which I'm not really convinced that that's the case. I think it's more along the lines of, this thing happened to them. It was international news. So of course people are going to offer them money for their stories. And it's not like we're talking about Bill Gates here. So I think anybody would be like, well, I guess, yeah, I could use a few extra bucks. Why not? So they'll take it. And most people would. And, he goes and tells a story. And then the next people that contact him are like, okay, well, we'll pay you a little bit of money. We'll pay you a little bit more, but this time we want some new information that you didn't reveal last time, because they want the hot scoop, they want the big story, the new information, stuff like that. So I suspect that's what's happening here, which is why it doesn't necessarily prove anything. It doesn't prove that it's a hoax, in my opinion. I'm not saying that it's not a hoax, but that alone doesn't convince me that it's a hoax, because we've seen this before in a lot of other cases. The most prominent one I can think of is the Rendlesham Forest case, which I'm sure we'll get to that sooner or later. It's a great case, but some of the witnesses did embellish their stories and basically invent new stories over time. And usually they did this on TV programs or whatever, whereas other witnesses never went on TV, or at least very rarely, and their stories stayed the same throughout the years. So you see this, as the more they're interviewed and the more they tell their story, they just sort of add to it over time.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, so let's see. So it has a little description here starting off. By Sunday night, the news people had left Pascagoula. Dr. Hynek was on his way back to Chicago, and on and on. So let's see. It gets back to, let's get down to
the interview.
Yeah, let's see. All right. So I think the tape starts with sort of halfway in between, and it's with Charlie's voice. I guess he did most of the talking, and it's halfway through a sentence saying, "Do you want to alternate? You can be the police investigator, Agent ETA."
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So your first line, I guess, will be, "What did you say your name was?" So I'll start with,
"Yeah.
Even though I'll be the laughing stock of the country, I'll tell what I've seen and the experience I've had."
What did you say your name was?
Charles Hickson, Hickson. Even though they laughed me out of Jackson County, I'll do what I know is right. That's all I can do, and I don't expect anybody to believe it. It's just unbelievable.
So there was a weight in Charlie's voice, as though he was having to push the words out, heave them out.
Oh, that's more of like an editorial description, I guess.
I guess it's
little flowery there. He had to push the words up. Push them up.
Pushed them out, man.
But
you ever had your words pushed in? Never mind. Training Day is a reference. Anyways.
Oh.
Yeah. We just have to know what happened. We happened to y'all from the very beginning.
And I'd like to pause here to apologize for our weak-ass Southern accents. But anyways, we'll do our best.
Yeah.
Well, this will be the third time.
We just want to make sure to hear your story. That's what convinced us now.
Yeah, there's no now on there.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Calvin and me, this boy, he works with me. We went down below the grain elevator along the river. We caught a few hardheads down there, a couple of croakers, not much. So I said to Calvin, "Son, let's go up by the old Shopter shipyard. I've caught redfish in there and speckled trout."
Is he your son?
No, he's just a friend. He's from Jones County. That's where I'm reared from. I've got a farm and a home up there. Well, so we went over there to try a little while. We sat there fishing. I don't know how. I guess we must have seen the thing the same time. It's a blue light. It circled a bit.
How high was it?
You couldn't hardly tell. It wasn't too close. But it wasn't 2-3 miles away. It was pretty close. And a blue light. You're surprised when you look at it in the sky and you see a blue light. It really calls your attention to it. Then in just a little while, it come right down above the bayou, about 2-3 feet above the ground.
How close was it?
25-30 yards. but it might have been 35, 40 yards. You see something like that, it'd scare you to death, and I couldn't believe it. I started to head for the river.
Was there a noise to it?
A little buzzing sound. Just like that. That's all. Wasn't any back blast or anything. And you think you're dreaming about something like that, you know. And I started to hit the river, man, and Calvin he went hysterical.
What's Calvin's last name here now?
It doesn't say that. It's Parker, Calvin Parker Jr. He got his father's name. And then it says there's a pause, and then Charlie continues. So we was right on the river. It didn't hit the ground. It hovered. And all of a sudden, right in the end of it, this opening was laid up there, and 3 of them just floated out of the thing. They wasn't on no ground.
They didn't have feet here there now?
I just want to point out that ETA is embellishing his part of the transcript a little bit, just so you know.
I draw my inspiration from the Dukes of Hazzard.
And from playing Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest. No, they didn't have no toes, but they had feet shape. It was more or less just a round-like thing on a leg, if you'd call it a leg. I was scared to death. And me with a spinning reel out there, it's all I had. I was so scared. Well, you can't imagine. Calvin Dunn went hysterical on me.
Then what happened? They walk on up to you?
They just glided up there to me. Then one of them made a little buzzing noise, and 2 of them never made no noise.
What kind of noise?
And that's actually in the transcript, by the way. It has uppercase Z's, then lowercase Z's, then an uppercase, then lowercase, then uppercase. So I'm just being accurate to the transcript.
It sound like a machine?
Yeah, like that. It might have been contact in the others. See, I don't know. By then, I was so damn scared, I didn't know anything. And 2 of them just floated around behind me and lifted me off the ground.
By your arms?
By my arms. With their pincher things. They must have done something. I just raised off the ground.
Well, they didn't use no force now?
No force. No? They didn't hurt me. I didn't feel nothing.
How was your body doing then?
Buddy? The buddy?
Your body, boy.
The buddy. He just passed out on me.
Oh, your buddy. Yeah. He just say buddy. Never mind.
He just passed out on me, and they glided me into that thing. You know, how you just glide somebody. All of us moved like we were floating through air. When I got in there, they had me, they just kind of had me there. There were no seats, no chair. They just moved me around. I couldn't resist them. I just floated, felt no sensation, no pain. They kept me in that position a little while. Then they'd raise me back up.
Now, you say they had some kind of instrument on you, didn't you?
Some kind of instrument. I don't know what it was. I didn't see anything that I could call an instrument that I've ever seen before.
Well, what did it look like? Could you describe it?
I just couldn't describe it.
Was it like an X-ray machine?
No, it wasn't like no X-ray machine. There ain't no way to describe it. It looked like an eye, like a big eye. It had some kind of an attachment to it. It moved. It looked like a big eye, and it went all over my body, up and down. And then they left me.
They left you inside the machine?
Left me right by myself. In the position they had me in, I couldn't move. Just my eyes could move, and I don't know how long they left me. I don't even know if I stayed conscious, but I think I did. And then they came back.
How long did they leave you?
I don't know. I never wear no watch.
How long would you say?
I'd say 20 to 30 minutes. Then, when they came back, they laid me back over again.
You didn't try to talk to them, ask them what was going on?
Yes, I did, but I'd get a buzzing sound out of one of them. That's all. They didn't pay me no attention, my talking or anything.
How many eyes did they have?
There could have been eyes, but I didn't see any. But there was something that came straight out more or less where a nose would be on a human being's face.
Hold on, sorry. I touched the screen and it freaking went crazy like it. Okay. Make sure machine. You never wearing a
Agent
watch.
Ether's in the chat. She says, first of all, to her accents, she says, "Oh my God, lol." And then now she's saying, now she's saying, "Ew, creepy." Yeah, that is pretty creepy. Like if you look at the pictures and these things, they don't look like robots according to the descriptions. They like, we didn't spend too much time on the descriptions, but man, they have like mummy skin and they look, I don't know, these things are really weird looking.
All right. So the last little paragraph you said that what was it? Ended on a human being's face.
Yeah, and then next up for you, I think, is they have any hair.
Yeah. Oh well, they have any hair now?
I don't know. I just swear I don't know. That's blank in my mind.
You looked at them, didn't you? Did they breathe?
I swear I don't know.
How tall were they?
They were about 5 feet tall. They
didn't have no kind of clothes or nothing?
Not so's I'd noticed.
And you can't tell me what color they was?
Man, you as scared as I was.
Was they white oaken? What the hell is that?
That's probably a typo.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll just read it how it's spelled right here. Was they white oaken, pale, blue, green?
I think it's supposed to be looking.
Yeah.
Best I remember, they looked pale like to me.
Wrinkled skin?
It might have been. It looked kind of like a skin fit. They might. What does that mean? A skin fit?
I don't know what a skin fit is.
Like either the skin is fit on them, like that's kind of creepy, dude. Like the skin is wrapped on like on top of something else, maybe, or maybe like the skin itself is like throwing a fit. I don't know. I don't like it either way. I don't like that one bit. All right, it might have been. It looked kind of like a skin fit. They might have had something on. They might not have. I don't know.
You say below the nose there was an opening?
Like a slit, and I never saw that opening move. And they had something on each side of the head that resembled ears, but didn't look like ears that we know. And the head, I didn't see any neck. It looked like it just sat there on a body.
Was this right after dark?
It wasn't too long after dark.
Well, why you waiting till this time of night to go call us?
Well, Mr. Fred, when I got out of there, I knowed nobody wouldn't believe me. I went by the Mississippi Press, beat on the door. This colored guy was sitting at the desk. Apologies, I'm just reading the transcript. That's a term that is offensive from what I understand, so apologies for that. I said I wanted to see a reporter. He said there won't be no reporter till morning. I thought about it again. If I call the sheriff's department, they won't believe me. If I call the police department, they won't believe me.
Well, how'd you know unless you tried?
Well, I apologize for that. That's my thinking.
How much did you have to drink?
I hadn't drank anything, but in the 45 minutes to an hour before I called you all, I did drink. I had to settle my nerves. I just about went crazy. And I gotta get back and let my wife know. She's probably hysterical now.
Your wife's all right? You remember leaving?
Leaving where?
The ship, when they put you out.
The only thing I remember is that kid, Calvin, just standing there. I've never seen that sort of fear on a man's face as I saw on Calvin's. It took me a while to get him back to his senses, and the first thing I told him was, "Son, ain't nobody gonna believe this. Let's just keep this whole thing to ourselves." Well, the more I thought about it, the more I thought I had to let some officials know.
What'd they do after they let you go?
There was a buzzing sound, and it was gone.
Can you describe the vehicle?
Yes, I can. It was about 8 feet tall. It wasn't round. It was oblong, sort of oblong, and the opening it had was at one end of it. The only lights I seen on the outside was that blue light.
Inside? What lights they have?
I didn't see no bulbs or anything. It just glowed light, but it was real bright. I don't know.
This next one.
This next part. So I don't know if it's skipping part here, but it says Charlie told how he's tried to call Keesler Air Force Base and how they told him to call the sheriff. So we went over that. There was a few more questions and the interview was over. So I guess it skips over part of that. So it says Sheriff Diamond asked Charlie to come back in the next morning to make a complete statement. He said he didn't want any publicity and he didn't want to get his family upset. Then Diamond and Captain Ryder went out and left the two men alone in the room with the tape recorder still going. And this is the secret tape recording where they didn't know that they were being observed or recorded. So this is the transcript for that. Charlie's voice was shaky as he said to Calvin. So I guess I'll be Charlie. I can't take much more of that. And Calvin sounded frantic.
Calvin, I got to get home and get to bed or get some nerve pills or see the doctor or something. I can't stand it. I'm about to go half crazy.
I tell you, when we went through, I'll get you something to settle you down so you can get some damn sleep.
I can't sleep, yet like it is, I'm just damn near crazy.
Well, Calvin, when they brought me out of that thing, God damn it, I'd like to never in hell get you straightened out.
His voice rising, Calvin said, my damn arms, my arms. I remember they just froze up and I couldn't move. Just like I stepped on a damn rattlesnake. I don't know how that makes sense, but...
I guess if he was really afraid, like if you're like frozen in fear, I suppose. They didn't do me that way,
sighed Charlie. Now both the men were talking as if to themselves. Calvin said, I passed out. I expect I never passed out in my whole life.
I've never seen nothing like that before in my life. You can't make people believe.
I don't want to keep sitting here. I want to see a doctor.
They better wake up and start believing. They better start believing.
You see how that damn door come right up?
I don't know how it opened, son. I don't know.
It just laid up and just like that, those sons of bitches, just like that they come out. They come out.
I know. You can't believe it. You can't make people believe it.
I paralyzed right then. I couldn't move.
They won't believe it. They're going to believe it one of these days. Might be too late. I knew all along there was people from other worlds up there. I knew all along. I never thought it would happen to me.
You know yourself I don't drink.
I know that, son. When I get to the house, I'm going to get me another drink. Make me sleep. Look, what we sitting around for? I got to go tell Blanche. What are we waiting for?
And it says, Calvin says panically, I got to go to the house. I'm getting sick. I got to get out of here.
And then Charlie gets up and leaves the room, and Calvin was all alone. And he says, one more thing.
Calvin says, it's hard to believe. Oh, God, it's awful. I know there's a God up there.
And then I
says,
guess, yeah, go ahead, ETA.
Yeah, it says his words, and as he prayed, it became inaudible.
Yeah, and then that's the end of the transcript. So this is from NICAP.org. And the title of this article, if anybody wants to look up the transcript for themselves, it's All They Meant to Do Was Go Fishing, the Pascagoula Incident, Charles Hickson, Calvin Parker Abduction Case, October 11, 1973. That's sort of the title. So just Google All They Meant to Do Was Go Fishing, the Pascagoula Incident, and it should come up, and it's the NICAP.org link. So Agent Ether says, I believe you. Aw, thanks. I hope that was a convincing performance. But, yeah, we got lots of practice with our southern accents playing
yeah, we did here now there
is playing Red Dead, which I don't know if those are at all accurate to any accent that anybody has anywhere in the world, but I like to think that it's a southern accent. I've never been to Mississippi, so I have no idea what they really sound like there, but you know what I mean? Like that's our best effort, I suppose, for an accent.
Yeah, well, hell if I know there, boy.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's pretty much the case in a nutshell. Now, there are some other things that sort of surround it, other UFO sightings that we mentioned and, that happened around there. And you could go on and analyze a lot of what happened afterwards as well, as far as like witness statements and things like that. But like I said, I'm not a huge fan of comparing later witness statements. I like to get as close to the event as possible. And from what I read, this tape recording was taken approximately 3 hours after the event, give or take. Now, that recording, like I said, that recording is available online. And I'm thinking like I want to try to figure out how to clean it up a little bit because it's really noisy. Like it's kind of hard to hear what they're saying. It's old tape and it sounds like old degraded tape. It's very, very noisy. When I use my noise, I have like a noise removal thing that I use for our podcast, for our voiceovers. It gets rid of stuff like, any air conditioning noise or anything like that in the background. It does degrade your voice a little bit, but the tape was so noisy when I tried that on the recording, it just completely destroyed it. Like you couldn't hear what they were saying at all, basically. So I'm going to see if I can figure out, the way I use the tool is basically like a sledgehammer. I'm going to see if there's a better way to use it to get a better result, basically. But if I am able to get that cleaned up, maybe I'll put it on the Patreon bonus. Otherwise, at the very least, I'll probably put a link in the episode for where to find these recordings. They're actually, maybe I'll just say where to find them because I'm probably going to forget to put the link when I'm editing this. So let's see. Where was it? No, that's not it. I have it on my other browser. Give me just a moment here. If I can find
Agent
this.
Ether.
Okay, here we go. So it's at noufors.com/Pascagoula_abduction_audio_files.html. So that's no UFORS, Northern Ontario UFO Research and Study. And it doesn't just have the recording of this conversation, it also has other stuff. It has Charles Hickson interviewed by Dr. James Harder. It has Chuck Burgess, Pascagoula newspaper reporter, interviewed by Ken Doyle on the radio. It has the Pascagoula Sheriff, Fred Diamond, comments on the Hickson Parker abduction investigation. It has another Fred Diamond recording being interviewed on the radio. It has a bunch of stuff on here that, it would take I don't have anywhere near enough time to listen to all this stuff, unfortunately. But, even though you can find this stuff online, I really wanted to see if I can clean up this recording to make it easier to listen to, because it's not easy to listen to in its current form. But either way, that's...
it's listen to, and you guys are doing it either.
Hey.
I am not a professional.
Zing. So I guess Agent Ether joined us on the live show here. Welcome, Agent Ether.
I was an admin, so I raised my hand, and I think it put me on the stage.
Yeah, you have that power as an admin. There's only 4 admins on this Discord server, and you have the power.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't want to believe these people. I don't like abduction stories because I don't want them to be true. They're so creepy, and the fact that there's 2 people and that they're corroborating each other's story, it lends some credibility to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that they were. Oh yeah, sorry, ETA. Go ahead.
So I think I was about to say the same thing you were about to say. Is it the fact that they were left alone in that interrogation room and they didn't know that they were being recorded?
Yeah, exactly. That's
quite credible right there.
We're gonna say
it's different too. It's a different description for different. Have there been? Do you know if there's been any similar descriptions for that type of alien?
I have seen descriptions with similar to the hands, like the pincher or claw-like hands, but I'm not aware of any descriptions that match this particular type of alien or robot or whatever the hell it was.
It's so weird. It's unique.
Yeah, incredibly weird.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's other similar accounts out there, but not that I know of.
Yeah. But yeah, it's super creepy, and the fact that they were talking about it and being recorded without knowing it, to me makes it a lot more believable. At least I believe that they believe they're telling the truth at the very least, right? So
yeah,
I don't know if maybe it was some kind of hallucination, maybe who knows what happened. And the problem for me with abductions is that it's so far outside of any sort of experience that I've had. It's just really hard to put myself in their place. It's really hard to imagine that this really happened, no matter how good the evidence is, Yeah. But all right. Well, I guess
I have the same opinion. The only big credible part of this is the recording from which they were, when they were in the interrogation room.
Yeah.
That's by far the most reputable part of this story.
Yeah, by far. And we have some corroborating witnesses that, potentially came forward years later that saw the UFO. We had witnesses seeing it, the day before their UFO sightings. There were witnesses calling into the police department. This seems like a legitimate UFO sighting. I mean, it's hard to dismiss at the very least.
Yeah.
Were you saying something, Agent Ether? I see your sound sort of popping off and on.
No, it's just very creaky where I am staying. It is an old house.
Oh, an old creaky house. Wow, that's scary.
Oh, maybe there's spooky ghosts.
Scary is it's like way up on this hillside, and I'm very nervous about if there's an earthquake because there's been a couple of big earthquakes north of us, up in like the Eureka area, closer to the border of Oregon. So in the back of my mind, I'm like thinking about the big one, and I'm like, of course I'd be in the city when it strikes in this house on top of a hill.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This old creaky house.
Well, at least you're on top of the hill, so when stuff falls down, you're going to be falling onto other stuff. So, the people below you will get squished more than you, hopefully.
It's much better. It's pretty sheer. It's pretty sheer, and then down below it's like a highway.
Oh, really? So it must have a really nice view at least.
It does, yeah. You can see all kinds of things from the top.
Oh,
you can
sweet.
Even peek out. Yeah, you can even peek out and see the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
lean
cool.
out. Yeah.
You have to send me a picture. But
Yeah,
all right.
I was going to. It's dark now, so I can't.
Yeah. So, all right. I that's pretty much all I had to say about the Pascagoula abduction. Did either of you have, Agent Ether or Agent ETA, any final thoughts?
I mean, that's all my thoughts on it.
Agent Ether?
I have nothing more to add to this conversation.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up for this week's episode.
Keep it strange.